9 for California by Sonia Levitin, illustrated by Bowman Smith. Now, the other one that goes with this is actually my favorite. This one's good too, but the other one is called Boomtown, and it is after they get to California. This is their trip to California, and it is like a crazy road trip. If you've ever been in a car and stuck for too long and bored, just think about this one and how hard it would be to go all the way on a long trip with horses instead of a car. Pa sent a letter by stage. Come to California, my dears. I am lonely without you. In the letter was a big banknote, all the money Pa had in the world. He had worked in the gold fields for a whole year. What good is gold, Pa wrote, without my family? There's Amanda, if you read the other one with me. Amanda is the one who ends up baking pies and making lots of money in the next book. Mama sent a letter back. We're coming. Then she bought a big sack and started to pack. The neighbor said Mama was daft. It's 21 days to California. Who would take 5 young'uns so far? I would, said Mama. The sack grew fatter and fatter. What's in the sack, Mama? I asked. Everything we will need, Mama said. What will we need? I asked. Wait and see, said Mama. Everyone came to wave goodbye. People brought letters for their dear ones in far-off California. 9 of us crowded into the stagecoach. Mr. Hooper, the banker, wore a tall black hat. Cowboy Charlie brought his lariat. Plump Miss Camilla, the teacher, sniffed a little perfume bottle hanging from a chain around her neck. Then there was Mama, Baby Betsy, Billy, Joe, Ted, and me, Amanda. The grown-ups looked at us with wide eyes. Their mouths drew in tight. 5 children in that crowded little stagecoach for 21 days? The stagecoach driver stopped us, shouting, Lady, put the sack on the top with the other bags. It won't fit inside the stage. Yes, it will, said Mama. My girl Amanda will sit on the sack. And quick as a wink, Mama hoisted her sack on board, and I sat down on top of it. It felt all bumpy and lumpy, hard and soft. I was proud to be the one that Mama trusted. We all sat so close that our knees knocked together, 3 facing forward, 3 backward, and 3 in the middle. That's pretty crowded. 21-day road trip. 6 horses pulled at their reins, ready to run. The driver jumped onto the high seat. Beside him sat the shotgun rider with a gun on his shoulder. Hey, giddy up, cried the driver. With a creak and a rumble, a heave and a shake, we were off. Trees and houses spun away. Dust flew into my eyes. My teeth rattled as we bounced and bumped and shook. Baby Betsy screamed. There, said Mama. Hush, hush, Baby Betsy threw up on Mr. Hooper's lap. Babies do that, huh? Oh, dearie, dearie me, Amanda, get me a rag from the sack. I reached in and got Mama the rag. She mopped up the mess. Mr. Hooper held his hat up high. Cowboy Charlie frowned over his lariat. Miss Camilla sniffed her perfume bottle. Baby Betsy got hiccups. Hip, hip, hip. It made Billy giggle, then Joe, Ted, and me. We laughed our giggle fits, rolling and punching one another. Mr. Hooper grumbled to Mama, "My goodness, woman, I hope you have something in that sack to keep these children quiet. We have only just begun." "Indeed," said Mama. From the sack, she took a sugar lump for each of us. We sucked and sucked, even baby Betsy. Brother Billy had brought his whistle. He began to toot. Toot, 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 went the whistle. Toot, tweet, toot. Mr. Hooper twirled his hat. He told Mama, "My good woman, that whistle should have been left at home." Mama took the whistle and tucked it into the sack. "We'll see about that, Mr. Hooper," she said sweetly. From the sack, Mama pulled a piece of string and started a cat's cradle. We leaned and we lurched all over one, playing cat's cradle. I and my brothers, Billy, Joe, and Ted. If you haven't ever played cat's cradle, all you do is you get a piece of string or yarn, and it's something that you do with your hands, with the string between your hands. You might be able to ask a grown-up if they know how to do it, or you might be able to look on YouTube and find somebody that shows you how to do it. It's kind of fun. "Last stop in Missouri," shouted the driver. "Next comes Kansas." My legs felt curled up and wobbly. My stomach rolled over like the wooden wheels of the coach. The stage driver brought a plate of beans for everyone and a hunk of bread. Mama sat us all down in a row. "Eat," she said. "I hate beans," yelled my brothers. "You'll like 'em by the time we get to California," said Mama. "Eat up." "What's for dessert?" I asked Mama. "Prunes," said Mama. "Amanda, go get them from the sack." You know what prunes are? Prunes are dried plums. They look like a big raisin, but they're sweeter, and I think they're pretty delicious. Back in the coach, my tummy felt funny. Beans and prunes acting up. We giggled and gurgled. We made faces and noises. Those kind of noises. Mr. Hooper glared at Mama and said, "My good woman, can't you find something better for your children to do?" "Yes, indeed, Mr. Hooper," said Mama, and she called out, "Plants!" Billy, Joe, Ted, and I named all the plants we knew. Then we named all the animals, all the birds, all the presidents, the states in the Union, and the oceans and countries of the world. Mr. Hooper fanned himself with his hat. "My good woman," he said, "can't your children ever stop talking?" "Stop talking, children," said Mama. "Let's sing." So what do we have here? We got donkey, pussy willow, goose, Missouri, Australia, poison ivy, California, Asia, India, buffalo, dandelion, Europe, hummingbird, Africa, Arctic, George Washington, all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to read them quite all. Fox, woodpecker. One thing my kids do in a car is they like to play something they call 1,000 questions. And it keeps them entertained and happy, but at some point I get tired of that as well. We sang every song we knew. We sang in English, some in French, and we started over in Pig Latin. Baby Betsy sang too. Wah, wah, wah. Miss Camilla's face got very red. Children should be seen and not heard. They are all sleeping in there as well. That actually looks pretty miserable. Night fell. How much longer? I asked Mama. How much further to go? Only 20 days more, Mama said brightly. Now go to sleep. We slept in the stage, jostling and jiggling. In the morning, I felt all scrambled and sore. I looked out over the prairie with endless grass and endless wind and the long, long hours moaning by. I was so bored, I thought I would die. All day I waited and hoped for something to happen. It finally did. What do you think is going to happen? Look, there we go. Big storm. The sky went black. Jagged streaks of lightning crashed overhead. The horses shrieked and screamed. The coach pitched like a boat in the sea. Icy cold rain came down, a sudden flood. Hailstones the size of turkey eggs pounded the coach. "We're sinking in mud," called the driver. "Everyone out!" We climbed out into the freezing rain and the mud. Everyone heaved and pushed until the coach was unstuck. Back inside the coach, we smelled like wet cats. Miss Camilla fluffed out her hair and touched the perfume to her curls. Mr. Hooper tried to reshape his hat. Cowboy Charlie wrung the water from his lariat. Everyone sighed. Baby Betsy cried. Mama nodded towards the sack. "Nothing warms the bones like a hot licorice whip," she said. I reached in and gave licorice to everyone. Mr. Hooper, Cowboy Charlie, and Miss Camilla all smiled, and Miss Camilla's cheeks turned red. There they are, all eating their black licorice, which I like better than the red. The days dragged on. We ate beans and prunes, and we liked them no better than we had at the start. The long road never ended. I wished that something would happen. It did. Look at that. You know what those are? Buffalo herd. Far off, we saw brown and shaggy beasts, like a large dark stain on the far prairie grasses. "Buffalo!" shouted the driver. "Look out!" The shotgun rider turned and began to fire over the heads of the beasts. Thousands of buffalo ran straight toward our coach. We heard them roar. We smelled their smell. The coach shook like a leaf in the storm. Mama pulled the sack out from under me. "Pepper!" she cried. I reached for a jar of red pepper and gave a handful to everyone except baby Betsy. We leaned out the window, ready. The buffalo came closer. I saw their flashing eyes. "Now!" shouted Mama. I tossed my pepper right into the nose of a huge buffalo, the first one in the herd. It made the buffalo sneeze and snort. The buffalo turned away and left our wagon standing safe. Days dragged on as before. Nothing changed but the sky, full of deep colors, then stars. I wished something would happen, It did. What are those bad guys, it looks like, huh? The coach stopped. We fell forward. 2 men stood in the road. They wore masks. They had pistols. One said, "Give us your gold, your jewels, your silver." Mama rounded her mouth and blew. I reached into the sack for Billy's whistle. I blew 3 hard, piercing blasts. Startled, the robbers turned. The driver and the shotgun rider and Cowboy Charlie jumped on top of the outlaws. With his lariat, Cowboy Charlie tied the outlaws to a tree. We all climbed back into the coach. We rode for days and days, nights and nights, up mountains and down again, across rivers, into the endless dry desert. I hoped and wished that something would happen. It did. Look what happened. "California!" shouted the driver. "California!" shouted everyone except for baby Betsy. She was finally asleep. California! I could hardly believe it. I was so happy. At the stagecoach stop, about 1 million people came to greet us. One of them was my pa. Pa waved his hat and cheered and smiled. He picked Mama right up and gave her a kiss. When he saw us 5, Billy, Joe, Ted, baby Betsy, and me, he kissed us all and swung us around. He was so glad. Then Pa asked, "How was the trip? Anything happen?" "Nothing much," said Billy, Joe, Ted, and I. Mama only laughed. Pa brought out our luggage, including the sack. Pa opened it and looked inside. He scratched his head. He smiled a crooked smile at Mama. "What a silly thing to do," he said, "bringing an empty sack from Missouri to California. I'm glad you come to me, my dear. These children need someone with good sense to take care of them." "Young uns do need their pa. It's true," said Mama. She smiled at me and winked. Mr. Hooper, the banker, took off his hat and gave Mama a little bow. Cowboy Charlie laughed and laughed, his shoulders twitching, kind of quiet. Miss Camilla, the teacher, gave Mama her little perfume bottle. "I'll never forget you," she said. The 3 turned to Pa. "Nice family," said Mr. Hooper. "Good young uns," said Cowboy Charlie. "Little ladies and gentlemen," said Miss Camilla. Billy, Joe, Ted, and I kept our faces straight as we could, not daring to laugh. Mama folded up the sack, and we headed for our new home. When we were settled, Mama and I stuffed the sack with goose feathers. On winter nights, we would lie on it, all 5 of us, sometimes Mama too, rocking and swaying, pretending we were in the stagecoach, bound for California again. The end.